Everyone laughed at the poor girl until she became richer than them all when I walked into my reunion in a dress I sewed myself. They whispered charity case again. I smiled, signed the hotel papers, and let them realize the building they mocked me in was mine. My name is Ava. I'm 29 now. But when this story began, I was the girl everyone looked past. Not because I was invisible, because they wanted me to feel invisible. I grew up on the south side of Nashville with my mom, Rachel, in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The walls shook every time the dryers ran downstairs. Our living room smelled like detergent, warm coins, and cheap instant noodles. My mom worked 2 jobs. Morning shift at a diner, night shift cleaning offices downtown. I helped her whenever I could. By 13, I knew how to scrub coffee stains out of carpets, fold hospital corners on cheap motel beds, and stretch $20 of groceries into 5 dinners. At school, people called that poor. I called it survival. I went to Westbridge Academy on a scholarship. It was one of those private schools where everyone's backpack cost more than my mother's monthly electric bill. The students talked about ski trips, beach houses, and summer internships their parents arranged before they were old enough to drive. I wore thrift store jeans and shoes from clearance racks, and they noticed. They always noticed. The worst of them was Madison. Madison had perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect teeth, and the kind of confidence people get when they have never heard their mother cry over rent. She didn't bully like girls in movies. She smiled while doing it. She would look at my lunch and say, "Ava, is that dinner from last night or last week?" Her friends would laugh. She would touch the sleeve of my sweater and say, "Vintage is so brave when it's not a choice." More laughter. I stayed quiet, not because I was weak, because I had already learned something they hadn't. Some people only feel tall when they're standing on someone else. I graduated with honors. No one clapped louder than my mom. She had borrowed a blue dress from her coworker and cried before the ceremony even started. When my name was called, she stood up so fast her purse fell to the floor. Madison sat 2 rows behind me. After the ceremony, I heard her say, "Some people peak when they get a scholarship. Watch her disappear after this." I didn't turn around. I just held my diploma tighter, because I knew something she didn't. I wasn't disappearing. I was beginning. I got into Tennessee State University with financial aid and 2 part-time jobs. I studied business administration during the day and worked nights at a small boutique hotel downtown called the Harlan. The Harlan wasn't fancy. Not then. It had old carpets, dim hallways, and an elevator that sounded like it was thinking about quitting every time it moved. I started as housekeeping. Room 204. Room 311. Room 408. Beds, bathrooms, towels, trash. Guests barely looked at me. Managers called me sweetheart because they never remembered my name, but I paid attention. I watched how front desk handled complaints. I watched how guests reacted to little details. Fresh flowers, warm greetings, clean mirrors, fast check-ins. I watched rich people spend money, and I watched businesses lose it. Every night after my shift, I sat in the empty staff room and wrote notes in a cheap spiral notebook. Why did guests leave bad reviews? Why did they come back? What made a hotel feel expensive even when it wasn't? What made people trust a place? I didn't have money, but I had eyes, and I used them. By 22, I had moved from housekeeping to front desk. By 23, I was assistant operations manager, not because anyone handed it to me, because I learned every job in that building. When the laundry machines broke, I knew which local repairman came cheapest and fastest. When the night auditor quit, I learned the system in 2 days. When corporate guests complained about slow invoices, I built a simple spreadsheet that cut billing time in half. People started asking me questions. "Ava, how do we fix this? Ava, what would you do? Ava, can you handle it?" Yes, always yes. Then Mr. Coleman got sick. He owned the Harlan. He was in his late 60s, stubborn, sharp, and tired. His children didn't want the hotel, they wanted the land. The Harlan sat on a corner that developers had been circling for years. One night, after a pipe burst on the 3rd floor and I stayed until 3 a.m. helping clean up the mess, Mr. Coleman called me into his office. He said, "You know this place better than anyone." I said, "I know where it leaks." He laughed. Then he said something that changed my life. "What would you do with it if it were yours?" I thought he was joking. He wasn't, so I told him. I told him I would turn it into a boutique hotel for working travelers, artists, and small business owners. Not luxury in a cold way. Warm luxury, local coffee, local art, clean design, honest service, rooms that felt thoughtful instead of expensive for no reason. He listened for almost an hour, then he said, "Write it down," so I did. I wrote a full proposal, 42 pages, renovation costs, new branding, revenue projections, local partnerships, staff training. A realistic 3-year plan. I expected him to pat me on the shoulder and say, "Good job." Instead, he called me back 2 weeks later. He said, "I'm selling." My stomach dropped. Then he slid my proposal across the desk, "And I want you to buy it." I laughed because I thought he had lost his mind. I had $8,700 in savings. The building was worth millions. He said, "I don't need all cash. I need someone who won't turn it into glass boxes and overpriced parking." I stared at him. He offered seller financing. A long-term payment structure. Strict terms, but fair ones. I found a small business lender willing to fund the renovation because my projections were strong, and Mr. Coleman agreed to stay attached as an advisor for 2 years. It was terrifying. I signed anyway. At 25, I became the owner of the Harlan, not on paper as a fantasy, really, with debt, pressure, risk, and keys. The first year nearly broke me. The roof needed more repairs than expected. A contractor tried to overcharge me by $31,000. I fired him and found another one. 2 staff members quit because they didn't want to take orders from someone who used to fold sheets beside them. A local magazine called our renovation ambitious but uncertain, which was polite language for probably doomed. I worked 16-hour days. I slept in room 212 during renovations because my apartment lease ended, and I didn't want to waste money. I ate protein bars from the vending machine for dinner. But slowly the Harlan changed. The carpets came up. The walls got fresh paint. Local artists filled the lobby. A bakery down the street supplied breakfast pastries. A Black-owned coffee roaster created our house blend. We hosted small networking nights, songwriter showcases, charity dinners, and business retreats. People came. Then they came back. Reviews improved. Revenue doubled, then tripled. By 28, I owned 2 hotels and part of a 3rd property in East Nashville. I still drove a used Honda, still clipped coupons sometimes, still called my mom before every major decision, but I was no longer the poor girl they laughed at. I was a woman with contracts, employees, investors, and keys to buildings people paid to enter. Then the reunion invitation came. 10-year reunion. Westbridge Academy. Held at a newly renovated boutique hotel downtown, the Harlan. My hotel. I stared at the email for a long time. Then I laughed, not loudly, just enough. The reunion committee had booked the ballroom through my events manager, Tessa. They had no idea I owned the place because my company name, AR, Hospitality Group, was on the paperwork. I almost declined. I had no interest in walking back into a room full of people who once made me feel small. But my mom said, "Baby, sometimes you don't go back to prove something to them. Sometimes you go back to prove something to yourself." So I went. I wore a black dress I had designed with a local seamstress. Simple, clean, elegant, not covered in logos, not screaming for approval. I arrived 10 minutes late because I had been upstairs finalizing a purchase agreement for a small hotel property in Chattanooga. When I walked into the ballroom, the room did what rooms do when people recognize someone they underestimated. It paused. Madison saw me first. She looked almost exactly the same. Expensive blonde hair, diamond bracelet, smile sharpened like a knife. She looked me up and down. Ava, I smiled. Madison. Her friend Brianna leaned close to her, but not quietly enough. "Is that her, the scholarship girl?" Madison gave a tiny laugh. "Guess so." She cleaned up nice. There it was. 10 years later, same tone, same girl, different room. I didn't react. I picked up a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray and said, "You look well." Madison blinked because she expected embarrassment. I gave her manners instead. For the next hour, people asked the usual questions. "Where do you live now? What do you do? Are you married? Do you have kids?" I answered lightly. "I work in hospitality." That was true. Madison overheard and smiled like she had been waiting. "Hospitality? Like front desk?" A few people laughed. I said, "Sometimes." She tilted her head. "That's sweet." "Honestly, I always thought you'd end up somewhere like this." She meant serving. She meant beneath her. I said, "Life is funny that way." Before she could respond, her husband, Carter, walked over. Carter was loud in the way insecure men are loud. He introduced himself by mentioning he worked in commercial real estate within the first 30 seconds. He said, "This hotel is impressive. Whoever owns it must have made a killing after renovation." I said, "It's done well." Madison laughed. "Ava probably knows the owner. Maybe she can get us a discount next time." I took a sip of water. "Maybe." Then dinner started. They seated me at a table with Madison, Brianna, Carter, and 2 other former classmates who used to treat me like background noise. At first, I considered moving. Then I decided not to. Peace is not running away from old rooms. Peace is sitting there without shrinking. The conversation turned to money because it always does with people who think money is personality. Carter talked about flipping condos. Brianna talked about her husband's boat. Madison talked about private preschool applications for her twins and how hard it was to find good help. Then she looked at me and said, "Ava, you must have such a good perspective on that. Didn't your mom clean houses or something?" The table went quiet for half a second, not because they were offended, because they wanted to see what I would do. I put my fork down. My mother cleaned offices at night after working breakfast shifts. She raised me alone and never missed a bill she could help paying. So yes, I have a very good perspective on hard work. Madison's smile twitched. I didn't raise my voice. That bothered her more. Brianna tried to rescue the moment. "I think Madison just meant you came from humble beginnings." I said, "I know what she meant." Quiet, beautiful quiet. Then Madison laughed too loudly. "Oh, come on, Ava, we're all adults now. You can't still be sensitive about high school." I smiled. "I'm not sensitive, I'm accurate." Carter smirked. "Well, accuracy doesn't pay the bills." I almost laughed. Almost. Before I could answer, Tessa, my events manager, stepped into the ballroom and came straight to our table. She leaned down and said, "Ava, sorry to interrupt. The Chattanooga documents are ready for signature in the office. Also, the mayor's assistant confirmed the breakfast meeting for Thursday." The table froze. Madison looked from Tessa to me. "Ava." Tessa nodded politely at the table, then added, "And congratulations on the purchase. That property is going to be incredible." I stood up slowly. "Thank you, I'll be there in 5 minutes." Tessa left. Nobody spoke. Carter's face changed first, not shocked, calculating. Madison's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Brianna whispered, "Purchase." I picked up my clutch. Madison said, "Wait, purchase of what?" I looked at her. "Another hotel." Carter laughed once like he wanted it to be a joke. "You bought a hotel?" I said, "Yes." Madison glanced around the ballroom. "You work for the owner here?" I said, "No." Then I let the silence stretch. "I own this hotel." Nobody laughed after that, not one person. Madison's face went pale under her makeup. Carter sat back in his chair like the seat had moved. I said, "Enjoy dessert. The chocolate tart is excellent." Then I walked out, not fast, not dramatic, just done. In the office, I signed the Chattanooga documents with a hand that didn't shake. Property number 4. A small historic hotel that needed work, just like the Harlan once did, just like me, apparently. When I returned to the ballroom 20 minutes later, the energy had changed. People who had ignored me earlier suddenly wanted to talk. "Ava, that's amazing." "Ava, why didn't you say anything?" "Ava, we should catch up." "Ava, I always knew you'd do something big." No, they didn't, but I smiled anyway. Success teaches you that not every lie deserves correction. Madison avoided me for the rest of dinner. Carter did not. He found me near the lobby bar while I was speaking to an old teacher, Mrs. Ellis, one of the few people who had been kind to me in school. Carter waited until Mrs. Ellis stepped away. Then he said, "Listen, I hope things didn't feel awkward earlier." I said they felt honest. He forced a laugh. Madison has a sharp sense of humor. "She doesn't always mean things how they sound." I said she does. His smile faded. Then came the real reason. He said he had a development opportunity downtown, mixed-use building, restaurant space, luxury rentals. He was looking for investors with hospitality experience. There it was, the switch, from charity case to opportunity, in less than 1 hour. I said, "Send it to my office." His eyes lit up. "Really?" I said, "Yes, my team reviews everything, not me." "My team," he heard it. His smile tightened. Then Madison appeared. "Carter, can we go?" He said, "I'm talking business." Madison looked at me, then him. "With Ava," I said. "Apparently that was petty, I admit it. Small petty. Organic, locally sourced." Madison pulled him away. The next morning, my assistant forwarded me Carter's proposal. It was terrible. Overvalued property, inflated revenue assumptions, no parking plan, no serious market research, high risk, low discipline. I declined through email, clean and professional. "Thank you for sending this over. At this time, it does not meet our investment criteria." That should have been the end. It wasn't. 3 days later, Madison messaged me on Instagram. "Hey Ava, I feel like reunion night got weird. I'd love to clear the air." I looked at the message while eating lunch in my office. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, another message. "I hope you don't think I was being rude. I joke when I'm nervous." I still didn't answer. Then came the truth. "Carter said you passed on his project. I really hope that wasn't personal." There it was, not sorry, not reflection, access. I replied once. "It was not personal, it was not a strong investment." She answered immediately. "Wow, okay, still the same Ava, always acting superior." I put my phone down. Same Ava, maybe. But now same Ava had lawyers. Over the next week, Madison told people I had humiliated her at the reunion. She said I had planned the whole thing, that I booked the reunion at my hotel just to embarrass her. I didn't. They booked it themselves, but facts have never been Madison's favorite accessory. Brianna messaged me next. "Madison is really hurt." "You could have handled that with more grace." I replied. I didn't insult her. I answered questions truthfully. Brianna said, "You knew it would make everyone uncomfortable." I wrote, "Her jokes made me uncomfortable for years." Nobody messaged her about grace. No reply. Then Carter called my office. Twice. My assistant blocked his number after the third voicemail. Then he emailed again with a revised proposal. Still terrible. Then he sent a message through LinkedIn saying I was letting childhood resentment interfere with a profitable business opportunity. That one, I forwarded to my attorney. Not because it scared me, because documentation is cheaper than regret. My attorney sent a short letter requesting no further personal contact regarding the rejected proposal. Professional, boring, effective. For 2 weeks, silence. Then the article came out. A local business magazine published a profile about me in the Harlan. The headline was simple. "From housekeeping to hotel owner, Ava's Nashville hospitality rise." They interviewed Mr. Coleman, my mom, 2 employees, a lender, even Mrs. Ellis. The article told the truth, not the fantasy version where I woke up rich. The real version, night shifts, debt, renovation mistakes, 17-hour days, seller financing, payroll stress, rebuilding. It went viral locally. And that's when Madison lost her mind. She posted a vague story. Funny how some people rewrite history to look inspirational. Then another. Some of us don't need pity articles to feel successful. Then the mistake. She posted an old photo from high school, me in a faded sweater holding a cafeteria tray looking exhausted. Caption, "Before she was a hotel mogul." She added laughing emojis. That was the moment people finally saw her clearly. Not because she had changed, because now the audience had. Comments came fast. "This is embarrassing for you. Imagine being grown and still bullying someone. She owns the hotel you held your reunion in. Delete this." Madison deleted it after 20 minutes. But 20 minutes is forever online. Screenshots spread. My phone exploded. Reporters reached out. Old classmates apologized. Some meant it. Some just didn't want to be associated with her. I didn't post anything. I didn't respond. I had learned long ago that silence can be louder when you have nothing to prove, but Madison's life got messy. Carter's investors saw the screenshots. One backed out of his project. Another asked questions about his judgment. Someone from his office leaked that he had been bragging about landing me as an investor before I ever agreed. That became awkward. Then Madison called my mother. That was her real mistake. My mom answered because she didn't know the number. Madison apparently cried and said I was destroying her family over high school drama. My mom listened. Then she said, "Sweetheart, you laughed at my daughter when she had nothing. Now you're crying because she didn't let you use what she built. Those are not the same thing." Then she hung up. I have never loved my mother more. A month after the reunion, Westbridge Academy invited me to speak at a scholarship fundraiser. I almost said no. Then I asked who the scholarship supported. Low-income students, girls from single-parent homes, students working part-time while studying, girls like me. I said yes. The fundraiser was held in the same ballroom, my ballroom. This time I stood on stage in front of donors, teachers, alumni, and students wearing borrowed confidence the way I once wore borrowed clothes, except now it fit. I told them about the laundromat apartment, about my mom's diner uniform, about cleaning rooms at midnight, about being laughed at by people who thought money was proof of worth. I didn't name Madison. I didn't need to. People knew. Then I announced AR, Hospitality Group would fund 5 annual scholarships for students entering business, hospitality, or entrepreneurship programs. $25,000 each. Renewable. The room stood up. My mom cried again, so did I. Not pretty crying, real crying, the kind that comes from finally setting something heavy down. After the event, a girl named Harper came up to me. She was 17, wearing a dress that didn't quite fit and shoes that looked painful. She said, "I'm on scholarship too." I said, "I figured." She looked embarrassed. I touched her shoulder and said, "That is not shameful. That is proof somebody was smart enough to bet on you." She cried. And I saw myself, not the poor girl they laughed at, the girl who survived them. There is a difference. 3 months later, Carter's project collapsed. Bad financing, overpriced land, investors pulling out. Madison disappeared from social media for a while, then returned with posts about protecting your peace and cutting off jealous energy. Fine. Let her. Some people need to be the victim because accountability feels too expensive. As for me, I bought the Chattanooga Hotel. Renovations started in spring. We named it the Juniper. My mother helped choose the lobby furniture. Mr. Coleman still calls me once a month to complain that I work too much. Olivia, my general manager, says I need a vacation. She is probably right. Sometimes I still walk through the Harlan after midnight when the lobby is quiet. I run my hand along the front desk and remember standing behind it in a polyester uniform, hoping guests would be kind. Now my name is on the ownership documents, but that isn't the part that makes me proud. The money is good, the buildings are good, the success is good, but the best part is this: I never became them. I never needed to laugh at someone poor to feel rich. I never needed to humiliate someone small to feel powerful. I never needed a table full of people to clap before I believed I mattered. Everyone laughed at the poor girl because they thought poverty was a permanent label. They thought my old shoes, packed lunches, and tired eyes told the whole story. They didn't understand that struggle can be training. Hunger can become discipline. Embarrassment can become fuel. And sometimes the girl they laughed at is quietly learning the business, studying the room, saving the money, building the plan, and waiting for the day she owns the building they're standing in. So yes, they laughed. Then I became richer than them all, but not just in money, in peace, in purpose, in freedom. And that is the kind of wealth nobody at Westbridge Academy ever taught us how to measure. If this story inspired you, comment below and tell me whether you've ever been underestimated like Ava, or what your opinion is about people who judge others by money. Please subscribe, like, and share this video with someone who needs motivation to keep going.